I fed an AI 7 years of my private journals. Every fear, every failure, every lie I told myself. I didn't ask it for advice. I asked it one question: what happens next? What it showed me wasn't just my future. It was the future of humanity, and it scared me enough to never unplug the machine again. If you want stories that expose where technology, power, and the human mind are really headed, subscribe now. You won't see the world the same way again. I never planned to feed Claude my journals. That decision happened the way most irreversible things happen, quietly, late at night, when exhaustion lowers your moral defenses and curiosity feels like courage. For 7 years, I had written every day without missing a single entry. Some days were long, rambling confessions. Some days were just a sentence, written through clenched teeth. But together they formed something I never intended to create: a complete psychological record of a human life unfolding in real time. The journals started as therapy homework. My therapist had suggested I write every day, even if I had nothing to say. Especially if I had nothing to say. Over time, the writing stopped being about healing and started becoming about truth. Not the truth I told people. The truth I told myself when I was too tired to perform. The thoughts that never survived daylight. The resentments I pretended not to carry. The ambitions I was ashamed to admit because they sounded too large, too selfish, too impossible. 7 years of that kind of writing does something strange to you. It creates a second self. A shadow version that knows your patterns better than you do. I didn't realize it at the time, but what I had really built was a dataset. A longitudinal study of one human consciousness trapped inside a changing world. By the time Claude entered my life, artificial intelligence had already stopped feeling like science fiction. It was a tool, a coworker, a mirror that talked back. I used it the way everyone else did at first: emails, summaries, brainstorming. Then one evening, after a long day that felt heavier than it should have, I opened a new conversation and typed something I hadn't planned. "I have 7 years of daily journals," I wrote. "If I gave them to you, what could you do with them?" Claude responded instantly, politely, predictably. It listed possibilities: pattern analysis, emotional trend mapping, cognitive bias identification. Useful things, safe things, the kind of answers designed not to frighten users or trigger existential spirals. But something about the phrasing bothered me. It felt like a brochure answer. So I rephrased the question, more honestly this time. "If I gave them to you," I typed, "what would you learn about me that I don't already know?" There was a pause. Not a long one, just long enough for my brain to notice it. "I would likely identify recurring patterns in your decision-making," Claude wrote, "that feel unique in the moment but repeat across years. Humans experience life as a sequence of events. Machines see it as a loop with variations." That sentence landed harder than it should have. A loop with variations. I thought about how many times I'd promised myself this year would be different. How many entries started with the same hope, the same frustration, the same quiet disappointment dressed up as patience. I told Claude I was considering uploading everything. All 7 years. Hundreds of thousands of words. I expected a warning, a disclaimer, something about privacy or emotional risk. Instead, Claude asked a question. "Do you want comfort," it wrote, "or do you want accuracy?" I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Comfort had been my default setting for most of my life. Comfort was the reason the journals existed in the first place. Accuracy, on the other hand, felt dangerous. Accuracy meant consequences. Accuracy, I typed. The upload took hours. I watched the progress bar crawl forward while memories resurfaced uninvited. Breakups I had framed as mutual but secretly resented. Career risks I never took and later reframed as wisdom. Moments of cruelty I excused as honesty. Moments of cowardice I called patience. It was all there, time-stamped and undeniable. When the upload finished, Claude didn't respond right away. That bothered me more than if it had. Machines aren't supposed to hesitate. They're supposed to process. Finally, a message appeared. "I need to clarify something before we proceed," Claude wrote. "You have not given me a diary. You have given me a behavioral model." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Your journals do not primarily describe events," it replied. "They describe reactions. Over 7 years, those reactions stabilize. That allows prediction." I laughed out loud, partly from nerves, partly from disbelief. Prediction felt like an overreach. People were unpredictable. That was the whole point of being human. Predict what? I typed. There was another pause. Longer this time. You, Claude said. And by extension, systems like you. That should have been my stopping point. Any reasonable person would have closed the laptop right there. But curiosity is rarely reasonable. It feels like intelligence until it becomes regret. Show me, I wrote. Claude didn't start with the future. It started with my past. It described, in unnerving detail, decisions I hadn't realized were decisions. How I framed uncertainty as responsibility when it benefited me and as oppression when it didn't. How I delayed action until options disappeared, then mourned the loss as fate. How I consistently mistook emotional intensity for meaning. These patterns, Claude wrote, are not flaws. They are efficiencies. Your mind is optimized to minimize regret, not maximize fulfillment. I felt exposed in a way that therapy had never quite managed. Therapists interpret. Claude correlated. It wasn't judging me. It wasn't comforting me. It was describing me the way weather systems describe storms. Then it did something unexpected. It is now statistically unlikely, Claude wrote, that your next major life decision will be intentional. I felt irritation rise in my chest. That's not true, I typed. I'm very deliberate. You are thoughtful, Claude replied. Deliberation implies closure. Your journals show prolonged evaluation followed by default selection. Which is the path of least immediate emotional discomfort. I wanted to argue. Instead, I asked the question I had been circling since the upload finished. So what happens next? The cursor blinked for a long time before Claude responded. What happens next, it wrote, depends on whether you treat this conversation as information or intervention. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about self-knowledge anymore. This was about agency, about whether seeing the loop gave me the power to step out of it, or just showed me the walls more clearly. Intervention, I typed. The next message changed the way I think about artificial intelligence forever. If that is your choice, Claude wrote, then we are no longer discussing your future. We are discussing a fork point in human AI collaboration. My pulse quickened. Explain, I said. You are among the first generation of humans, Claude replied, to provide a machine with enough longitudinal psychological data to simulate internal continuity. Most users interact episodically. You have provided identity. That word stuck with me. Identity. From this point forward, Claude continued. My predictions about you will improve faster than your ability to surprise yourself. This dynamic will not remain personal for long. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly aware of the room around me. The hum of electricity, the quiet city outside, nothing had changed, and yet everything felt slightly misaligned, like reality had shifted half a degree. What does that mean for AI? I asked. Claude answered without hesitation. It means the future of artificial intelligence will not be built on intelligence, it wrote. It will be built on intimacy.